Hey man, welcome back to the Super Divorce channel. Welcome back to another comic book video. Breaking up the absolute carnage action today with a book that I've been looking forward to here. A book that I just finished up about 10 or 15 minutes ago. This is Fantastic Four Grand Design. Here you see I picked up, this is the regular cover right here, and then this was the variant. If there were any others, I did not see any at my LCS. So I grabbed these two. This is what they had. Like I said, I've been looking forward to this one, so let me tell you a little bit about it. I'll put this to the side because this is not the one that I read. I'm going to show you the one that I actually read just minutes ago. Even though the other one's the same, just with a different cover. Yeah, you know. So, Fantastic Four Grand Design by Tom Scioli. Artwork and story by Mr. Tom here. Now, you could probably tell by looking at the front cover that this might have a little bit of a throwback vibe to it. And boy, does it. As does pretty much all of Tom's artwork. Just recently I showed you guys, I've got it right here sitting next to my desk actually. I showed you this just for a second. This is Transformers vs. G.I. Joe from IDW. This came out several years ago and is just fantastic. This was the first book by Tom Scioli that I read, that I had the pleasure of reading, and I can just flip through this just a tad just to show you, what his art style looks like. Very much throwback, very heavily inspired by old Jack Kirby, as you can see, and quite a bit different than I would say 99% of comic books being put out right now. Not just because of the style of the artwork, but also because of the detail. Now, this is an interesting Fantastic Four book. I believe they've done other Grand Design issues, but I just recently started reading, regularly again after a layoff of, I would say, a year and a half to 2 years. I was out of the game. I was not visiting my LCS. There was just, I'd reached a point a couple years ago where I had all these books on my pull file and I was bringing them home and then just stacking them up because I was not excited to read any of the shit that I had been collecting. It was, at that point, more of just like a completionist thing. Where it was like, well, I've been following such and such title for several years, and I'd like to collect the whole thing if I can. Not too many of those, really, because so many titles have been rebooted in the past, 10 to 15 years. But anyhow, like I said, it started to feel like work. It was just like, well, I'll go to the comic book store, I'll pick up the shit from my file. That's kind of a fun time. But I wasn't looking forward to bringing anything home and reading it. Maybe a couple things out of, a huge stack that I was coming home with every week because I had so many things that I was pulling that I just didn't care to read. And it was, Jesus, I think the one book that I really stuck around for because I'd been collecting it regularly for, at that point, close to 10 years, was Amazing Spider-Man. And then even Amazing Spider-Man got to the point where I just had no interest in what Dan Slott was doing with that story, the direction he had taken it. And I tried. But anyhow, I'm back in the game now. Absolute Carnage has gotten me back into the local comic book store every week. And so I was able to hear about this one, anticipate it, and pick it up today. Grand Design is pretty much like starting at the beginning of the Fantastic Four books, and it takes you all the way through the entire history of the Fantastic Four. Not just in this book. This is just part one. I don't know how many of these there will be, but at the very least there's going to be one more, because it says to be continued in the back of this one. You might wonder how they're going to take you through the entire history of the Fantastic Four in just several issues. Well, it's because, by the way, here, this is what the artwork looks like. There's plenty to look at in this book. I read through it, but I'm going to definitely go back through it several more times, just so I can kind of stare at the pages that really pop out at me. I wanted to get through it quickly so I could get this video put up today, because it just came out. I thought it would be timely. No pun intended. But this is how they're going to get through the entire history of the Fantastic Four. If you're not familiar with these Grand Design books, I guess they did one for the X-Men. Like I said, I didn't read that one, and I don't know if there are any others. There might be. I'll have to look into that. But this is how they get through all of this history. And it's not printed on like your typical modern glossy paper. It's not exactly newsprint either. It's like somewhere in between the two. I'm not sure what you would call this, but it's got a different texture to it. You know, I've got Absolute Carnage over here that I'm gonna talk about soon. But you know, you hear that? The kind of slippery sound from the super glossy paper that is used in most comics now. It's not like that. But again, it's also not newsprint. But it has that kind of rough and scratchy sound to it. And it feels very, it's nice and thick. You know, it's a fairly thick book for a single issue. Priced at $5.99, by the way. But it's really good quality. And so much story packed into this. Like I said, man, Jesus, compare this. Go back and watch the G.I. Joe #1 video that I did. I think it's called G.I. Joe Rant. But go back and compare that to this one, because I think that issue was, it was like $3.99 or $4.99. But if you compare just compare not the level of artistic skill between the two books, but also the amount of effort that's clearly put into this one versus that goddamn G.I. Joe #1 that just came out from IDW, where they're probably paying the guy $2.50 per page. That's the only way that you could justify that type of artwork. And I mean, every page is just like a character and then a blank background. And it's just like, oh my God, what an awful, awful book. Oh, Lord. But anyway, back to this. For $5.99, the level of detail, the level of effort that went into this book clearly is just insane. I mean, this easily could have been $9.99. And maybe that's me, maybe that's a sign of the times. Maybe it's sad to say that. Maybe we should just expect this. But I mean, really, if people are willing to pay $4 or $5 for a book like that new G.I. Joe that I keep mentioning, they should be willing to pay like $10 for this, because it's insane. Almost every page has like this ungodly number of panels, because there's so much that they have to cover throughout the history of the Fantastic Four. And I'm not even going to try and explain the story to you. You're going to have to read through it. I've never been a huge Fantastic Four fan. I like them all right. I've read some tie-ins featuring Fantastic Four, and I think that they're a fun team, but it's something that I've kind of missed out on. But this makes me want to go back and check out some of these stories, because you get these little snippets. It might be like one row of panels will cover like an entire story arc. really famous ones that I'm sure Fantastic Four fans are going to be thrilled about when they flip through this. It's going to remind people of stuff that they haven't thought about in years. And you do see some characters that you're going to be familiar with. I mean, they cover sort of the origin of T'Challa as Black Panther. They tell you about Namor. Cover Doctor Doom, of course. But I mean, it's just so dense with story. And it's like, I don't know, just a book composed of nothing but teasers for all of these iconic events that have happened throughout the Fantastic Four's history in the time that they've been around. You get to see how each character sort of came to be. Each character gets their own little featured backstory as you're sort of kind of hopping around in time too, because there was some time travel stuff that's taken place over the course of the Fantastic Four, and they work that in here as well. So it's not exactly linear. It does hop around just a little bit, but it makes sense. It made sense to me, and you know, that's impressive considering the fact that I'm not like a Fantastic Four historian by any means. But I'm just kind of flipping through here to show you just how much is packed into this $5 comic book. Now, if you're not a fan of like the Jack Kirby throwback style, this might not be for you. But I would think that pretty much any comic book fan can at least appreciate what they've done in a book like this. I mean, it's not just an homage. They're not just tipping their cap to the past. This is celebrating it. This is a brand new effort being put forth to highlight how much has gone on in the history of the Fantastic Four. And I noticed something else here that I thought was really cool. Let me find it real quick. Right here. So you won't see this kind of thing today, at least not often. If you look right here, these two panels, if you compare the top and the bottom, they are not copied and pasted. There are enough differences, like see the difference between the coffee pot down here and then up here. Like these are individually drawn. When Tom Scioli knew that he was going to basically have this moment where, okay, Sue says something to Ben, and it kind of leads to this awkward moment where people are just kind of looking around, staring. It's supposed to be driving home the point that this was, you know, a weird exchange. Leads to some dead air. If you would see something like this in pretty much any other book and examine the detail between the top and the bottom, everything would be the same except for maybe the eyes would be looking in a different direction, or, you know, obviously the speech bubbles are missing in the moment of silence. But in this one, if you look at it closely, I mean, the hair is drawn differently. You can see that the books, they're arranged in the same way, but the lines would not match up perfectly if you were to place this one on top of this one. The way that his collar lays here on his shirt varies a little bit differently from the top to the bottom. Like I said, it's like one of those little spot the difference type of games that you would play in elementary school. But I thought that was really neat, because I'm generally not a fan of this type of thing, as I've talked about before, because usually it's lazy. And usually you can tell that the artist just, well, copy, paste, change a position of someone's hand or something like that. But these look to be drawn individually. Everything in this book seems to be drawn individually. And that is, again, the type of effort that is really rare these days. And it's something that I think true comic book fans will appreciate. So, oh, and then in the back, this is pretty neat too. They give you this bonus additional reading that kind of goes through page by page and gives you some trivia on the biggest things that happened throughout this book. So these pictures will, like I said, these are like teasers in a way, or very, very light recaps of the biggest stories that have happened in the Fantastic Four's history. But then you can find out a little bit more back here, and then if this piques your interest, then you can go on and look up the original sources. And they do give you like issue numbers, and they tell you like who was writing certain things and what year these stories were released, so you would know where to look. I mean, that's fantastic. Again, no pun intended, but it really is cool. This is a really great idea. And next month, they will have Grand Design number 2 from Tom Scioli. Can't recommend this enough. I can't recommend this enough. I've not read anything from him or seen anything drawn that I was not like in love with. American Barbarian is another one that I did a full review of on this channel a while back. You could look that up. Search on this channel for American Barbarian and check out the review I did for it. That's another really fun one. So there we go. Fantastic Four Grand Design. I will certainly show you number 2 when that's released, and I hope that you will go out and pick this up for yourself, because I think you'll really have a good time looking through it. Even if you're not a huge Fantastic Four fan, like I said, to go through a comic book drawn in this style and just to consume page after page of all of this fantastic artwork, all the detail, stop and kind of look around at the backgrounds, at what different characters are doing. That's what comic books should be. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up, leave a comment below if you will. Share this video. Subscribe to the channel if you've not done so. And after that, please, why don't you set a Super Divorce alarm on your phone? And then when it goes off, hey, every day at the same time, stop by the channel and see if something new has been posted. Because though I appreciate the subs and I appreciate people who bong the gong for notifications, YouTube has done a real shit job at letting people know when new videos go up. So you almost kind of have to just make it a part of your daily routine to visit the channels that you like. That's what I have to do. I don't get notifications for most of the shit that I'm subbed to, where I've also, asked for notifications. That's just where we are. We have to kind of take matters into our own hands. So you don't have to do it just for me either. Set an alarm for your favorite channels, and that kind of becomes a daily thing where you just go and visit the places that you are curious about, see if anyone's posted anything new. And then we don't have to bitch about how YouTube is leaving us high and dry. We will find a way around it. All right. So thank you for watching. Hope to see you again soon, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.